Sup y'all, and welcome to Regional and Interregional Interactions, Part 2. In this video, we're going to continue looking at how was China interdependent during the post-classical era. Looking at Vietnam. Socially, the examination system undermined the aristocracy, allowing some social mobility for commoners and the rise of the scholar gentry class into the government bureaucracy, more so than in Korea. Women had a greater role in society. They could choose their own husbands, and couples usually stayed in the households of the wives. Politically, they remained independent, but part of the tribute system. The Red River Valley did become part of the Chinese state from around 111 BCE up to 939 CE, but gained full independence under the Tang dynasty through a rebellion. However, Vietnam maintained a tributary role. Ideologically, the elite adopted Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism, along with the examination system. However, their own popular culture remained intact. Regionally and economically, along the southern fringe, the Vietnamese had one of the greatest gifts China ever received: Champa rice, a rapidly maturing, drought-resistant strain of rice that allowed 2 harvests of around 60 days each per season. Initially a tribute gift around 1000 CE, it was distributed to the peasants to increase yields, and was a crucial component in China's population rise. In turn, Vietnam acquired more efficient Chinese-style irrigation, and of course increased trade with China. Japan did most of its bartering from China around the 7th to 9th centuries, and this was mostly voluntary on their part, primarily due to geography. Regionally, Japan is a series of islands, separated from the East Asian mainland by over 100 miles, so they could adopt and absorb more or less what the people wanted. Socially, they were less patriarchal than China or Korea. Women could inherit property, divorce, and married couples often lived on their own or with the wife's family. The Japanese, however, did adopt the Confucian-style education system. Politically, Japan had been a region of warring clans, but became more unified after 500 CE. Japanese leaders sent missions to China to adopt their ways. The 17-article constitution was produced in 604, based on Buddhist and Confucian principles more than strict laws. They instituted a Chinese-style emperor and royal court, and modeled their capitals after the Chinese capital Chang'an. During the Heian period, from 794 to 1185, Japan had a strong central government with sophisticated elites, who were highly educated, wrote poetry, and often painted. During this time, the Japanese ended the formal tribute to China. Also, the elites lost influence to rival landowners. Power remained decentralized, with competing aristocrats. The countryside grew more lawless, where armed soldiers and bandits preyed on farmers and pirates terrorized the seas. A Japanese style of feudalism emerged, with warlords as the main landowners, who provided protection to small landowners and tenant farmers. The lords protected themselves and others through the warrior class, the samurai, who followed Bushido, the way of the warrior, which was akin to the chivalry of the knights, following virtues of bravery, loyalty, and honor. Over time, women lost power and respect due to the rise of this warrior culture. By the end of the Heian period, after a virtual civil war between 2 of the most powerful clans, the emperor gave the winning leader the title of shogun, or supreme general of the emperor's army. The emperor became more ceremonial, while the shogun essentially became a dictator. Ideologically, despite massive cultural borrowing of Buddhism and Confucianism, the Japanese maintained a distinctive Japanese culture. Shinto was a syncretic religion with elements of Buddhism and local traditions, such as the veneration of kami, or sacred ancestral spirits. They also developed a unique writing system, based off Chinese characters and phonetic symbols. Economically, most of the land was not arable, forcing them to rely heavily on fishing. They also lacked many natural resources, such as wood and iron ore. As a result, the Japanese needed to import most of their valuable goods. They engaged in extensive trade with China and through the Silk Road. China had a major impact on the rest of Eurasia. They developed many technological innovations, such as a process of creating salt through evaporation. They invented gunpowder around 1000 CE. The Chinese also developed several key navigational improvements, as well as papermaking that was invented in the time of the Han Dynasty. With the onset of printed books, it forced them to search students for cheat sheets during examinations. The Chinese invented paper money by the Tang Dynasty, and as paper diffused across Eurasia, it led to new forms of credit, such as bills of exchange, which are a written unconditional order by one party, the drawer, to another, the drawee, to pay a certain sum, either immediately or on a fixed date, for payment of goods or services. China's involvement in interregional trade with items such as silk and porcelain affected people far and wide, and in turn, their huge market with millions of people affected other regions. For instance, Indonesia and other spice islands were extremely dependent on China to purchase their goods. China itself was also changed with its connections with other regions and empires. For instance, from India it acquired sugar and cotton, from Vietnam the valuable champa rice, and from the Persians, windmills. Southern cities, such as Canton, became cosmopolitan centers with Arabs, Persians, Indians, and other ethnicities mingling with the Chinese. But perhaps the most impactful import wasn't a good or innovation, but a religion from India, Buddhism. With the collapse of the Han Dynasty, Confucianism was discredited, and Buddhism took root. The first printed book in 868 was, in fact, a Buddhist text, the Diamond Sutra. Buddhist monasteries provided travelers with accommodations, provided the poor with charity, assisted farmers with seeds, treated sick people, and even provided schooling. China's reunification under the Sui and Tang dynasties saw Buddhism spread even further. By 600 CE, there were around 4,000 monasteries, and they were largely exempt from taxation. However, the Buddhists were eventually challenged by nativists who still idealized Taoism and Confucianism. After around 800 CE, China took more of a xenophobic stance, with many disliking anything foreign. After a series of imperial decrees, over 250,000 Buddhists, monks, and nuns were forced to pay taxes. Thousands of monasteries, shrines, and temples were destroyed or converted for public use, and much of their land was taken by the Chinese state. In Europe, Christianity had overtaken all other faiths, whereas in China, Buddhism blended in with the other influential philosophies, having been assimilated permanently into their culture.
That is correct.